Marketing always had a seat at the table. Marketing was always the revenue owner and always had to be creative to cut through the noise when you're marketing more at mass. And then when I joined B2B, I realized, B2B is quite different. To see the evolution of B2B to become more like B2C marketing has been really exciting, but then has also, I suppose, played into a lot of my experience. If you're coming up in a true enterprise B2B world, maybe that is what excites you. And that's great. There's loads of great companies you can go work for that. But this really sort of tapped into the sort of both sides of my marketing brain, the consumer side and the B2B side. So fit for me, if that makes sense. Exit.
All right, so I got a great guest today. Shane is the CMO of Webflow. We're now running the Exit 5 website on Webflow. So there we go.
Love it.
It wasn't my decision. It's be way beyond my lane of where I'm comfortable. But Dan, who's my business partner, was like, when we make this change, we're updating the Webflow, and everybody's been raving about it. So that's awesome.
That is great to hear. Thanks, Dave.
Yeah. So we were talking briefly offline before about just like more enterprise type of marketing. I'm curious to talk about what the opportunity is at Webflow. You taking the CMO job there, like what was so exciting about that? It seems like an awesome company and product to be doing marketing for from the outside. I actually first got put onto Webflow. I think they had a bunch of these like viral ads or something. I feel like I remember from back in the day. So that's put me on. But just the opportunity as a company, what drew you there as a CMO?
Yeah, there are two big things. Like if I think first off about the space, you want to be at a company that has potential to have long-term momentum. And if you think about marketing technology, and particularly the website tech stack, it's very like code dependent and outdated. It talks to anybody about updating the website or building a website in any sort of scale business. It is a nightmare. We have customers who, before they move to Webflow, it would take them like 2 months to get any change done. And so obviously with the development of like low code tools and AI, that completely changed. And Webflow is like, we're a visual development platform. So we allow people to build all the power of code, right, but in a visual interface so designers can use it. And so it's just to me clear that kind of like electric cars, that ultimately this is how we would build for the web, like in a way that like the people who actually wanted to do the building were empowered to do it. And so big space that we could go and attack, which has been, borne out in the time I've been there. And then more personally, from a CMO perspective, I started in consumer marketing and then moved into B2B. My last job was very much like sales led, more enterprise led marketing. And my sweet spot, and what I love about Webflow is it's real end to end marketing, right? From a go to market motion perspective, we have a very, very large self-serve business, right? It's about 80% of our revenue. We've got an enterprise or sales-led business. We connect the two with like product-led sales motions, all that lovely stuff from a growth perspective. And then more from like a brand perspective, we have a CEO and really a founding team who care deeply about building brands. So it's not just about growth, it's also about brand. And so as a CMO, first off, it keeps me up at night, right? The number of balls I have to juggle is like blows my mind, right? But that's the excitement of it, right? Being able to think creatively one moment about brand activations, and then next moment you're in talking about SEO strategy, and next minute you're talking to the sales team about enablement. Like it's just every day is like a different adventure. And I think, as I know a lot of your audience are thinking about CMOs, I as becoming a CMO at some point and finding that lane for yourself, I think is important. And this one really kind of like taps into all the stuff that gets me out of bed in the morning.
I think that's the most fun opportunity in marketing. No, there's plenty of people that listen to this that come from the enterprise side, but it is fun. It seems to be the more of the modern way of like customer acquisition today. Like it's, you have a product that people can use for free or for $15-14 a month, all the way up to like large enterprises running their site. And that just feels like there's much more opportunity to do creative marketing when you can have some, it's like you don't have to spend half of your day justifying like the value of content with this type of business, right?
100%. Like for me, selfishly, I started my career in consumer marketing and consumer tech. And so, marketing always had a seat at the table. Marketing was always the revenue owner and always had to be creative to cut through the noise when you're marketing more at mass. And then when I joined B2B, I realized, oh, B2B is quite different. And to see the evolution of B2B to become more like B2C marketing has been really exciting, but then has also, I suppose, played into a lot of my experience. Whereas, if you're coming up in a true enterprise B2B world, maybe that is what excites you, and that's great. There's loads of great companies you can go work for that. But this really sort of tapped into the sort of both sides of my marketing brain, the consumer side and the B2B side. So fit for me, if that makes sense.
So I want to get back to a couple of things. I take a bunch of notes, and we'll come back to this. I got a couple of things I want to circle back to, especially the founder, CEO who wants to build a brand. That's a great one. We'll dive in there. But what I think is interesting is you have these two funnels, right? You have the free, product led funnel, but then you have this enterprise funnel. As a marketing leader and building the marketing strategy for this business, how do you do that effectively? I worked at a company when we were just going up market. I don't have a lot of experience here, but we were just going up market. And one of the things that I struggled with was, how do you feed both parts, right? Because the things that might drive acquisition on the lower end don't always drive acquisition on the higher end. And it is kind of two different motions. And so I'd love to go inside the Webflow marketing strategy and figure out how you feed both funnels. How are you thinking about that?
Yeah, well, the way that we think about the world is in three pillars, and there's a risk that I get too technical here. But the first part of marketing is generally, how do we go and build a brand around Webflow being this kind of visual development platform, and that's supposed to raise all boats, right? That's supposed to get companies of all sizes who have those pain points into either funnel, and then that's sort of you kind of have to have that bedrock, I think, of your marketing. And then underneath that, we have historically, we actually had two separate growth teams. One on the self-serve side, which was responsible for much more of the scaled acquisition programs, like search, for example. Search is very broad, targeted. You can't pincer in at a CMO at a large company on search, right? So certain channels were clearly going to drive more mass market into the self-serve funnel. And that was one team who was doing that and very much through the website convert. And then we had a separate team, which is our enterprise growth team, whose job it was to be much more focused. So, places like LinkedIn, where you can be a lot more targeted, content syndication, strategic events. I'm going to Gartner next week, where we know our upmarket audience is at those places. We can generate the MQLs and push them through the sales funnel. That's how we were set up until this year. At a certain scale, those two things being on island starts to cause a lot of pain. And also those funnels are hyper connected, because you'll end up getting the perfect lead in through the self-serve funnel.
Right.
And so we've now combined them under one growth leader. And a lot of the work that we're doing right now is connecting those two funnels. So
that's interesting, because I feel like what can happen is then in the first example, you end up having misaligned incentives. And so it's a good fit comes into one funnel, but that team's not really incentivized to work that lead, and then the whole thing breaks. So you're combining them, which is super interesting, because I was going to ask you about I've done this on a smaller scale, but one thing I struggled with was the shared resources. And it's well, this part of the creative team is only working on this part of the business, and how do you create this? And so hearing you align these all under one growth leader seems like it would make a lot more sense, strategically and just for the sanity of the team, right?
I think that's exactly right. And just for, I think, our accountability up to the CEO. Ultimately, the board and the CEO care mostly about the overall growth of the business. And if I'm coming to the table with very much these two isolated sort of targets and approaches, that doesn't resonate with them, right? And I will say that the best way to drive up market growth efficiently is through customers you've already acquired in self-serve, right? They're kind of free. You're not going to have to pay for an MQL. So yeah, there's a lot of efficiencies there. We're obviously early days in it, so find our feet, but it's been a big benefit so far.
And then do you think about, we're going to get back to team structure too. I want to talk about that. But one of the questions that I see come up a lot in the Exit 5 community is hey, we're selling to multiple personas, which you can do behind the scenes with email and targeting, but with things like the website, the content, how do you appeal to multiple personas, and how do you think about that in your marketing, and how do you not spend all of your day arguing over what should be on the website for this persona or that? How do you do that?
Yeah, so it kind of depends on what part of the funnel you're in. when we're thinking about the top of the funnel, the brand, we think about the persona that we're targeting as not necessarily like an individual job title, like the CMO at a certain size of company. We call them pro website owners. And it's a more kind of diffuse definition of a customer that has certain common pain points. And so if you're a pro website owner, when we say pro site, we mean like these larger, more complex websites. Your head of design could kind of see themselves in that persona if they're responsible for the website. So can your head of growth, and so can your head of engineering if they're managing the website. And so what we try and do is find like these common pain points for those folk, create this like aspirational customer in the top of the funnel, and then communicate that so that a more mass market can see themselves in it, even if it isn't like a specific job title.
Yeah.
And so we've done a lot of work on like what is that like kind of core persona for the top of the funnel, as you said,
I,
this pro site
so I,
owners.
I gotta post this link later because literally yesterday there was a comment about somebody asking for examples of they're doing a website redesign and they want solutions like a solutions navigation, and I'm on your site right now and it's a perfect example. So you have like the main site, you have the product which goes through the different features of the product, but then if you go to solutions it's very clear like, oh, I'm a freelancer, I'm going to click on this, here's the product marketing for freelancers, I'm a startup, I'm an enterprise, I'm an agency, I think this is a great example. So I'm shouting this out because I think it's one good way to do it. It's like literally taking people through and say like, yes, Webflow can work for almost anybody, but here are the specific use cases. And if I go to the freelancers page, I'm seeing copy and messaging and things that are specific to me and I can relate to that. Versus if I go to enterprise, I'm going to see more of the things that an enterprise might need.
Exactly. And so like we would consider our website like more middle of the funnel, right? So at that point, you're definitely starting to target for different persona types. The other thing that we're starting to do, we recently bought Intellimize, who are a website personalization
Oh,
company. And
sure. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, so that's a big opportunity for us. And we're about to dog food that ourselves to really start to test on the B2B context how we can personalize for those different audiences. So if it's a returning customer, for example, we already know that they've been on the freelancer page, shift the homepage to much more talk to them. And so there's a big opportunity there for us to better personalize the experiences that come in. But yeah, as you get lower funnel, that's where like very targeted messaging per persona is needed. Yeah.
All right. Can you dig into your team structure? So there's you. How many people are on the team? What does the marketing org look like right now?
Yeah, so we're about 80 people, which for our scale is on the larger side, but I think it's due to what I spoke about before about the surface area that we cover. And we're structured.
And speaks to the founder and CEO believing in marketing. Maybe there's not so much scrutiny over having a bigger marketing team in that world, right?
Exactly. Like, at a company like Webflow, we're pretty much almost 100% inbound, both on the sales side and obviously on the self-serve side as well, inbound. So big machine there to get that done. And so, yeah, we're structured. And I recently reorged the team. So we have a central creative team who are responsible for supporting the whole of marketing. And that creative team is uh, video, motion, design, copy, and web. So, like obviously for Webflow, our website design and build happens within the creative team. So we're pretty self-sufficient, which is great. And that is a central resource that supports everyone. Then I have
Oh wait, is there so you for each one of these, let's talk about like, is there a team leader? So is there like a creative director or someone that runs creative that then reports to you? Can you give me each one of those? People love this.
yeah. So I have a senior director of creative who reports directly into me, and she runs. We have one leader, a director for web and design, one leader for video because that's a very specific skill set, one leader for copy, and yeah, that's right. That's right. One of my missing. And then obviously ops. She has a dedicated ops team within her team.
Cool.
Then my next pillar is the product marketing and brand team. And so I have a senior director of product marketing and brand. That was a change that I made. I brought together product marketing and brand used to be separate, and I brought them together under one leader. The reason for that is I think about it's really important that our messaging scales all the way down from our mission and double clicks all the way down to a product feature. And then that our campaigns are all thought about in a consistent way from the brand level all the way down to a product launch. And so putting those teams together in one under one leader was critical for as we're starting to invest heavily in the brand this year. And so yeah, that's my next one. Then I have growth. So I mentioned that I used to have two growth teams. Now I have one. So I have a VP of growth that joined last year. And then finally, and we'll maybe talk a little bit about this, but our agency, what we call our agency flywheel, is hugely important at Webflow. So that means that like freelancers or agencies will sign up to Webflow and they'll bring clients to us. They're a massive acquisition channel and customer. So we have a dedicated team within marketing who are responsible for our OKR, which is Build a Thriving Partner channel. So that's everything to do with attracting agencies, enabling them to sell Webflow, incentives, all that stuff. So that's kind of the third one. And then lastly, operations. I actually have an open role for a head ops. And then, sorry, I should say the last one, which is an individual, is our head of our P&P director. So pricing and packaging reports directly into me. But he's an IC right now, so it isn't like one of the core pillars of the team, but critically important given like pricing and packaging for a company like ours is just critical. So summarizing that back, creative, product marketing, brand, growth, our agency team, ops, and P&P.
Beautiful. We got to make a clip of that. This is great. So I got a couple follow-ups on that. How do you let's talk about how you think about brand, because you have a creative team, but you also have brand, and product marketing and brand are together. Can you articulate the difference for people and how you see those two roles?
Yeah, 100%. So in our brand team within product marketing and brand, their job is to define who is the audience that we're trying to go after. So this concept of pro website owner. What are the key stories that we want to tell them? And what is a campaign roadmap that we would take to market to do that? So for example, in July, we're about to invest a couple of million in San Francisco out of home. And their job would be to come up with the strategy for that, write the brief, be like, okay, great. They would then go to our creative team and say, hey, Josie and team, this is what we want to achieve. Creative team will go, great. Okay, let's consider like how we can bring that to life with a creative concept. Let's think about how we can bring it to life with different activations. And so it's a great partnership there. And a lot of the time, obviously, as the creative team pick at it, we'll refine the brief, and there's a lot of back and forth there. And so that's how they play together. Very similarly to how a product manager would as well. If a product manager had a product launch to do, the product marketing manager would like to find, here's the audience for this launch, here's the story you want to tell for the launch, and then go to the creative team and say, hey, can you bring this to life in a product launch campaign? So that's why we combined brand and product marketing, is because effectively they're very, very similar processes and ways of thinking, just at a different altitude of our marketing.
I think that's a great example, because I think in the past, where if you just say, hey, creative team, we want to do this campaign, then they're missing the strategy of that. And it frees the creative team up to be creative and not worry so much about, like, yes, you want to care about the business outcome and be involved. But when you have the brand owner, I love that. And then also, when hearing you explain that way, it makes total sense that you have product marketing and brand together, because if you're going to create this out of home campaign, well then damn, it better be aligned to the overall messaging and fit in that strategy, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's been great so far. Like, obviously any change, we only reorged this way at the start of the year, and so we're ironing out the wrinkles, but it's been fruitful so far.
Okay, so we got creative, product marketing and brand, growth, ops, agency, flywheel, which is the partner program here, and then you have this individual contributor who does pricing and packaging. Have you owned pricing and packaging before? It's always a bunch of companies I've been at, it's kind of this weird, like, marketing sometimes owns it. Depends on what the skill set is. Like, you don't want me owning that, I can tell you that. There's it might live in product. You own it here. How did that come to life at Webflow?
This has been a journey, Dave. I'm laughing because
and what kind of crazy man would raise his hand and say, I'll own pricing and packaging?
So I started my career in B2B. Like, pricing and packaging and consumer wasn't really anything like it is in B2B, right? It's so much more simple. But started my career in B2B in ad role, where pricing and packaging wasn't really a thing, right? We were selling ad space essentially. So we just had a margin on top of the ad space we sold. First day at Intercom. Thank God you're here. Our new head of marketing. Our most important project is pricing and packaging. And I was like, what the is pricing and packaging? So I go on the internet, I'm reading everything. I'm like, I got it. Luckily, there was somebody internally who was running that project who was like a lot more experienced and smart than I was on it. So we muddled through it, but it gets kind of funnier because then at ZoomInfo I didn't own it, and back in Webflow and I own it again. I spent a lot of my time in Intercom thinking about this, but Intercom when I joined had extremely confusing pricing, and I don't think it was my first time go at it. I don't think I helped. I actually think that I probably made it worse.
Well, it's tough. Like, we had obviously a competitive product at Drift and like I think pricing, the reason I asked about it is because it's like for products that scale up and down depending on usage and different use cases, it's a crazy thing to unpack. And like, it's art. There's definitely science to it and you got to make it right, but there's a lot of art to it too. And it really is a hugely nuanced thing and it can be such a hard thing to balance. And so like, I don't envy that exercise at Intercom. Like at Drift, we had a guy who was like a former MBA VC type of role and like super, like his job was pricing and packaging and there was nobody better to do that. And it was like, let him own that. But it can be a really tough thing to unpack.
It is so tough. I'll end the story on this one. But so I been working on now. I'm at Webflow a couple of years, and we rolled out some pricing change at the end of last year. Somebody tweeted, it looks like the person who's responsible for Intercom's pricing is now responsible for Webflow's pricing because it's so confusing. And I was like, oh my God, I could not believe it. I was like, I had to share it right internally. I was like, oh God. To be fair to me,
Amazing.
like it is extremely difficult to your point. And the reason it's difficult is that particularly as companies like ours, we scale up market, effectively on the high end of the market, you have extremely high willingness to pay, right? People are willing to pay $200,000 for their website. And then the low end, much lower willingness to pay. And so how do you like kind of thread that needle? It's really, really difficult.
You just won me over, man. Like for the humility to like be able to make a joke about that and laugh on it on this podcast is like may just turn me into a fan of yours. Like, yeah, man, this is hard. that someone found that and posted about it is amazing.
It was a proud moment. Yeah.
And so how do you so just curious, like to kind of put a bow on this, the role of pricing and packaging, how do you see that? We talk a lot about how to be a great marketing leader, you got to influence change across the organization. I'm assuming you got to get pricing and packaging buy-in, but not consensus from product engineering, your customer team. What does it look like making changes and like shopping that around and working with those other teams? So like, yes, it lives in marketing. You own that, but you got to really bring everybody else in, right?
Yeah, I think that's right. Like, I think the first change that I made when I joined Webflow was getting really clear on who was responsible. So we had used Daisy, the driver, sort of approver, all that stuff, and really tighten that up. There was way too many voices in it, and I agreed with the CEO that ultimately, like, I would be the approver at that point, and that I'd have a council of people inputting, but ultimately I can make the call. So I think and that Daisy has changed now, but like I think being really clear on tightening who has a opinion that like has weight versus just like, hey, take this on if you can, is really important. And I think that's true of like pretty much any complex decision, is making sure that you're as tight as possible and separating what might be a counsel who's giving you advice that you then take on to make a decision on versus people who actually have an approval or not, is critical. And I would then say the second thing is, particularly for pricing and packaging, David, who runs our pricing and packaging, is a uniquely skilled person in both customer insight and data. So that when you go and try to get sign off on these different decisions, you're able to back it up both in data and also in like, hey, here's 5 calls I made to customers, or the survey that I did to make sure that the customers got this, so that most of your opinions are not like opinions that are backed by evidence, which then supports the answer. But it is extremely difficult, particularly when you've got different people on the exec team with different incentives. Like, your head of sales wants you to obviously maximize up-market growth, and maybe your founder wants sort of to change the world, right? And so wants scale. And so I think just like making sure that, as I said, those decision-making roles is like is locked in is really important.
All right, I want to talk about a little bit how you operate. So you mentioned you're doing this out-of-home campaign. You used the term campaigns before. We went over team structure. How do you operate as a marketing team? Do you believe in like, are the monthly cadences, quarterly things? Are you launching something every month? Are you doing campaign planning? People often ask about this, and I'd love to try to unpack how you do things. You're obviously going to have the always on stuff, search, digital, display, all that. But let's talk about campaigns a little bit.
Yeah, honestly, I've gone on such a journey on this. I will say that operations is probably like an area of development for me. And so I really need to lean on people who are stronger on the ops front. But here's how we do it at Webflow. And I actually think that we've got a lot better at it. So on an annual basis, we agree what are our top level OKRs, right? What are the goals? And so the Webflow marketing team is three. One is become a WXP, which is our category that we're going to like become for pro site. So this is the brand and PMM OKR, how do you reposition the company? Two is accelerate growth up market. So that's all the self-serve and enterprise growth to go and increase our acquisition up market. And then the third is build a thriving partner channel, which is all our agency stuff, right? So we've got those locked in. And on an annual basis, we'll review those and we'll set the actual metrics that we need to achieve to go in and do that.
Wait, let's pause on that. Actually, I love the way you have those goals laid out. People often ask about setting the marketing goals, and I think it's very easy to set like the pipeline goal. Like we know we need to generate X, but like I like how you have these phrases of like company pillars that we need to do. We need to establish web. I'm just making it like establish Webflow as X, and I love the idea of setting those like as 3 to 5 bullet points going into the year as your strategic objectives, and the metrics follow. Right? Is that am I hearing you right on that?
That's exactly right. So like on each of those then have multiple actually metrics that we need to hit. Yes, growth are the easiest to set metrics, but on the brand side, we can set things like product adoption of our new products that are related to the category you want to become, or branded search conversions, growth. At a certain scale, you start doing the surveys, right? The awareness and surveys and sentiment surveys. We're not quite there yet. I think you need to at a certain scale to have the data come back to be meaningful. And so you can set goals across all of those, and those are the metrics. And now we've got our North Stars for the year. Great. We then coming into the year, break those down into, well, what's the work that we need to do to hit those? Those are what we call our initiatives. So each of those OKRs has a set of initiatives. So for example, on our brand and PMM team, we might have build our brand with ICP content. So that's the whole content roadmap. It's like, we want to launch podcasts, we want ebooks, all that stuff, right? Those initiatives are set at the start of the year, but we do change them in the middle of the year if we need to like kind of flex on that. But I would say they're probably 90% locked for the year. We kind of know the high level work we need to do. Then on a quarterly basis, we define what are the deliverables. So if build a brand with ICP content is an initiative, in that quarter, we might say we want to launch this ebook, or we want to launch this podcast. If it's our strategic event initiative, it's go to Gartner Symposium. It's go to B2B Forrester B2B Summit.
Nice. Do those ever change, or are they pretty much set for the year?
No, quarterly. Now we're at the quarterly level, so those get locked. We riff on those quarterly, and honestly, given that we're fast moving, they riff mid quarter as well, right? Suddenly there's an opportunity to do something. We add in an extra deliverable, so we do need to be flexible, but we try as best as possible to plan that up front in the quarter, so that particularly when we have teams like our creative team, they need some visibility, right? They need to be able to resource plan and all of that. And then on a monthly basis, so we've gone annual, we've gone quarterly, and now on a monthly basis, I have a monthly check-in with each of the OKRs, where we look at what's our progress against the actual outcomes that we were supposed to achieve, so the metrics, how we're tracking against that, how we're tracking against the initiatives, so what did we say we would do if we actually done that work? In some cases, we'll have done all the work and it hasn't moved the needle. And we might go, okay, well, good effort, but like we're clearly got to change our approach here. And so that we do that on a monthly basis. And then on a weekly basis, I obviously have my like one-to-ones and team meetings, but we have this concept in the team of a Move Mountain project, where if it is of such a scale and importance that it's not just like captured day to day in the monthly check-ins of the OKRs, we now have a weekly specific project with a project plan that I check in on a weekly basis. So for example, right now, we're just kicking one off for what we're calling our road to WXP. We're going to announce it, like our actual, we've seeded in market that this is our vision. We're going to announce it later this year. And there's a ton of work to get that ready for announcement. Like, got to redesign our website. We got to do like a comms plan around it. We got to do an event. We got all this. So there's a work back. That's of such an important that I'm not just going to let that like, hey, I'll check in once a month and see how we're doing. And that's got to be like weekly. Where are we? Much more hands-on project management, quick decisions and all of that. So that's kind of the cadence of, annual, quarter, month, and then week that we go through. And we've been doing this now in this rhythm since the start of the year. And it's been, it's been great.
Very nice. I wish you could see my notepad right now. This is great. So that's great. Okay, that's good. You answered that question for me. Let's talk about reporting to the CEO. Something we get a lot of questions about. What's your relationship with the CEO? What do they care about? What do you share with them? What's their involvement in marketing? And maybe along the way, any lessons you've learned about managing up and the relationship between the CMO and the CEO?
Yeah, so I will say that I've had both in my journey, either reporting into the CEO or into like a president, and flipped around between that. When reporting to the CEO, typically the CEOs I've reported into have been founders. They've been very much the sort of visionary. And I think when reporting into a CEO like that, you have to realize that this is their thing. Typically, the brand is them. And like at Intercom, the brand was Des and Owen.
Sure.
And you're taking, and because they've built these incredible brands, they're clearly, like, I'm going to use a music analogy, incredible songwriters. They're actually great marketers, right? They've written this awesome song. The challenge is when the company was small, they wrote it and, maybe it was on the guitar, maybe there was some drums, whatever. Now you're stepping in and you've got to manage this thing at 80 people, whatever. You're now a conductor of this massive orchestra, right? And there's a big chance that you don't really fully understand the melody or the tempo that was really got the company to where it was going. And so I tell that analogy to say that, like, it's really important to get so close to that CEO that you can hear the music. And I've struggled with this, and I think I've got it at some points. And then I'm like, oh my God, I thought they'd like this, and they hate it. And you're like, oh God, I still can't hear the music. But the more you can leverage that, I think the better. And so that you build that trust, because sometimes you will actually have to say, no, for this audience, your music is not right.
Yeah.
And they won't trust you to do that if they don't think that you understand it and the core of it. And so I think it's just like really getting close to them and like appreciating the fact that they're probably really good at this and that they just have like 10 years of insight in the industry that you should not, should try and leverage that, but not over like just do what they makes them happy. Build that trust so that you can say, no, we need to go and do this other thing. Maybe I'll give an example, like bringing back to P&P, pricing and packaging. About a year and a half ago, we hadn't changed our prices in about 7 years. And there was a big need to change the prices and actually increase the prices in one way. And, Vlad was very nervous about it. It's like, he wants to change the world. He wants to make sure it's affordable to everybody. Luckily I'd built enough credibility and trust with him that he said, okay, like go for it. And it ended up being very, successful. And so anyway, I just think it's building that trust with the CEO is so critical. Yeah.
It's kind of this weird, it's like, it's this double-edged sword in that you want to work with the founder, like the visionary founder who has great ideas for marketing, can also be like a huge pain in the ass, but you'd much rather work with that person than the CEO who's like has no interest in marketing, doesn't want to be involved, just looks at you at like a number and wants you to just, report on those metrics. Is that a criteria that you would look for? Like if you're someone who's looking for a VP of marketing job or wants to be a CMO, like how high is that on your list of criteria for like evaluating companies, how much the CEO has a vision for and is involved in the marketing?
It's extremely high on my list that the company cares deeply about marketing for all the reasons that you said. And I also think that it's really important that you're, back to the music analogy, that your style somewhat like aligns with theirs, because you're going to have to play this music. And if it doesn't, that's ultimately not going to be successful. And what I've appreciated at Webflow is that, I generally almost all of the time agree with Vlad's input. I actually now report it into the president for like a bunch of reasons around bringing go to market closer together, which are
Sure.
the right reasons. But keep a really really close connection with Vlad on the marketing side, given how important it is to him, which I think is dead right.
How do you stay sharp today? There's you've built a great career, you're running marketing at a successful company, you have a really interesting job. You still have to find time for learning. The best marketing leaders that I know are still always curious. They're tinkering on their own stuff. They're not just, you might run a team of 80 people, but you're still a marketer at heart. I'm curious as to how you stay sharp.
Yeah, I will say this definitely atrophied maybe last year. There's a lot going on at work, and I found that I wasn't really keeping on top of other things. And so one of my New Year's resolutions, which I've actually stuck to, is I've get up now at 6 a.m. And my kids get up at 7. So I have an hour in the morning where I make myself a coffee. If it's not snowy, I go sit outside. And that's the time in the morning where I like, first off, I get ready for the day, right? Get my to-do list, get the calendar, all that stuff. And then typically that takes about 15 minutes. And then I've got 45 minutes where I might listen to some gong calls, or I might listen to podcasts. I might do some reading, some research. And so that hour in the morning has been just game changing for me, just to have some like focus time before the like chaos of the day hits. And so I would encourage anybody to find what that time is. It doesn't have to be the morning, it could be any time of the day, but having like an hour of the day where you're just like, you know, taking a breather, having a coffee, and doing some step back thinking is like really important.
Yeah, there's a great book. I think it's called The Road Less Stupid. And he talks about, let me just look. I want to the road less stupid. I wanted the road less stupid. Is that what it's called? Yeah. The Road Less Stupid by Keith Cunningham. And he just talks about it's written for founders and CEOs, but I think the what you said is really relevant and related. You have to make time for thinking time for yourself. And if you don't block it in, it's just like very easy to just hop into the day and just react. And so I love that you intentionally block that out. Are there specific things that you read or listen to? People are always asking. They want to know what you're reading, what you're listening to, where are you getting information from?
Yeah, like from a book reading perspective, right now I'm reading Claire Hughes Johnson book Scaling People, which is an excellent book. It's very, very tangible, and a lot of like kind of exacts how they did it at Stripe. And then I'm around here looking at about loads of books on sales management, like what sticks, and just any book that I see come out that like is interesting, I'll read it. And then probably so there's books, and then there's like podcasts. So the CMO podcast is a great one. I obviously used to listen to your previous one. I didn't realize Exit 5 existed until I was interviewed on here. So I'll listen to this one as well, which is awesome. Adweek have a good marketing podcast too. And so or the Kip and Kieran's HubSpot, what's called Marketing Against the Grain is a great one, particularly as you think about keeping on the forefront. They're really leaning into AI right now.
Sure.
And
That's actually what drew me in. I actually spent the day with Kip today. We played some golf this morning, Kip and I, and I was pumping him up. I'm like, damn it, I'm gonna give you lots of compliments right now. I've been listening to your podcast a lot because I do think they're doing a good job of like talking about, there's just a lot of interesting stuff happening in marketing right now. And this show, we don't really cover like news stuff as much. They're like ChatGPT 4.0 just came out, and I was going to go and read all these like nerdy articles, but it's way above my head. I was like, I bet you Kip and Kieran will do a podcast on this. Of course they did. I listened to that. They caught me up to speed. And so I like that. You mentioned books. A lot of people will say, I don't have the time. One thing that I do with books is like, especially when they're about a particular topic, like I don't put the pressure on myself to finish the book. Like if I just pick up that like sale, like the Challenger sale book, right? Somebody gave me that book. If I just go and grab like 1 or 2 chapters from that and treat it like a blog post, I just feel like you have to just always be sucking in interesting ideas from everywhere, And I like to hear you talk about that.
And that's right. The other thing I do is a lot of the time I will scan them. There's a lot of filler content in some of these books. Like they have one effective like idea, and they create a lot of content around that idea. So you can sometimes skip through and like kind of zone in on the more bits, that the chapters that maybe are more tangible.
We're gonna wrap in a minute, but what's exciting to you? What new innovative stuff is the Webflow marketing team doing behind the scenes that you can share?
Yeah, I think that like this is going to be so boring. Maybe this isn't innovative. Oh God. I think the most exciting thing for me right now
Then
is
you're
that
good. You've over delivered. Whatever you say now is okay. You're good. It can't all be like 10 out of 10. So
pricing and packaging. No, no. The thing that's most exciting to me now is that now we've defined this thing that we want to be, which is a WXP, and we want to go after the DXP category ultimately. And there's just a lot of like focus in the mind of creating a story around like more of a category. And I think you've been through this. In fact, like, with conversational marketing, I know you all did an incredible job of it. And then all of the things that flow from there, I'm excited this year. And again, this isn't like necessarily innovative, but going back to the basics and doing like classic brand building. I'd invest in and out of home, in comms and analyst relations. It's like, I think what's most exciting to me as a CMO is when you have this very clear destination you're trying to get to. For us, is like this WXP, and all of the things now are humming together. And so I think that that's what's getting me out of bed in the morning most year.
I'm not bored with that answer. What that answer tells me is that no matter how much is new, it's like we're just in with these like cycles of new stuff and like the timeless. It's like product marketing is always going to be relevant. Messaging strategy, you do have to play the analyst relations game as you're at a certain level of scale, and so like that is new for you to have to go study and unpack, right?
That's exactly it. Sometimes the classic marketing is the best marketing.
Was it fun to take a new CMO job too? Like, I think it's for me when I left Drift and went to Privy as an example. Like, I'd been there for 4.5 years, and I went to go take a new CMO job, and it was like, oh man, you kind of get like a fresh start, even though the company already existed. But it's like I get to take all the things that I learned, the mistakes that I made. And it just made me realize, like, when I was younger in my career, I don't think I appreciated enough, like, how much experience does matter. And I don't want to, I don't want to like set a bar for people that says, like, you just got like, some of it is you just do have to put in work and put in time because you need to learn. You need to have made mistakes at Intercom and mistakes at Zoom Info and whatever you did in the past to like figure out what the right plays are for Webflow. Do you know what I'm trying to articulate?
Yeah.
Like, you just, the more reps and time that you have, the better you're gonna get. And so I just wanted to like leave people with that thinking, to just push them to be okay with failing and making mistakes and messing up at the current company that you're at.
Oh, well, look, marketers are the shortest serving execs by some distance. And like the industry is littered with, uh, in inverted commas, failed CMOs. And so you kind of have to become comfortable with it. It is a fit thing. I know we're almost at time, but like I certainly, after my experience at Zoom Info, which is an incredible company, just like, we weren't quite the right fit for each other. And I think about it like, so big soccer fan, right? And Chelsea, when I was growing up, managed by Jose Mourinho, their whole strategy was like big, strong, fast players, direct football, like smash the ball into the goal. And then you had Barcelona, who were like, let's just tap the ball up the field, very strategic, and score a goal. Both teams were exceptionally successful. You want to make sure that if you're a Chelsea style football player, you're on Chelsea and you're not on Barcelona, because you'll be extremely unsuccessful. And so I think the big thing for me is like in marketing, just making sure that you find that fit, and that you have some humility, and that you're able to say, hey, I'm not great at everything. I've got a lane, and not to try and I suppose BS it or whatever, to try and get like a land a gig. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like the smartest people that I've worked with, it takes a dose of humility and be like, all right, at this point in my life and in my career, maybe this is not the right fit. However, while I'm at this company that is very sales led, can I at least learn about this motion and get smart about this so I can then like bring that with me? I think I got multiple times in my career, I got hired over. They hired 3 VPs over me before making me VP, and the first one was very hard. But after that, I was like, you know what? Like, screw it. I'm just going to learn. I'm going to make this person like my best friend. I'm going to treat them as my mentor. I'm going to learn as much as I can from them. And I do think that mindset like helped me so much in my career. So even if you're listening to this right now and you're at the wrong company right now, doesn't mean just go jump ship. Like, is there a pocket that you can learn in the next 12 to 18 months and acquire some skills, right?
Totally. Like the amount I learned. Zoom Info is the most incredible go-to-market sales machine you've ever seen in your life. It is just incredible. The amount I learned about how marketing support that and how automation can drive that, it was just incredible. And so I agree with that. And I would say, back to your original question on like, is it nice taking on a new gig? It is, but it's kind of like it does feel good, right? Fresh slate. But it feels like kind of like those, what is maybe not empty calories, but those calories aren't as deeply meaningful as when you've been longer at a company and you've been able to have big impact on something that's yours. And so as I look at this year Webflow, I think that we are going to do some big stuff. Like when we get launch our WXP in market, that's just going to be huge. And a lot of our work has been building up to that. So there's kind of like more maybe dense calories that you can live on longer.
All right, here's my final question. Throughout your whole history in marketing, your marketing career, if you could have one wish and solve any one marketing problem, some nonsense that we have to deal with, some magic thing like I wish I could get I wish I could emails for every podcast subscriber. I wish I could perfectly measure, attribution or something. What's Shane's one wish? One snap your finger, solve any marketing problem. What would it be?
Yeah, it is attribution, and I think that that is I was at AdRoll 10 years ago. We were writing ebooks on attribution. My last click is dead, and here I am, and everyone's using like last click, and it's like it's such a challenging thing to solve for, but it's kind of an obvious answer. So maybe if I give another one, would be just on the website, knowing who's on your website. And I think that we've got a lot better at that, and that is something that companies like Intellimise that we just bought, like built companies around. So that is more solvable, I think. But yeah, knowing who's on your website would be huge.
All right. Awesome. Shane, thank you for joining us on the Exit 5 podcast. Maybe at the very least, we turned you into a listener, even if it's only this episode to just listen to yourself back. If you're listening, do me a favor, go find Shane on LinkedIn, connect with him, send him a message, tell him you learned from. I took a bunch of notes. I've been furiously writing notes. It's a great episode. I learned a lot. I love doing interviews like this. Great to actually meet you and connect. Go find Shane on LinkedIn. And go check out Webflow. I think they're doing a great job. Specifically, I see a lot of questions in the Exit 5 community about product marketing, selling to multiple personas, having the 2 sales funnels. I think you all are doing a great job. So keep up the good work. And Shane, I'll see you around, man. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it.